Good evening, board members. I had some exhibits that I wanted to put up on the screen, but apparently the staff needed 2 days in advance to get them. Now, I wanted to say at the outset that, first of all, I appreciate all of you. I appreciate the positions you're in. I know that it's hard doing your job. And regardless of whether or not you agree with me, whether you sustain my objection or overrule it, whatever, I just want you to know that I appreciate what you're going through. I appreciate the efforts that you put in to make our schools and our techs better for our children. Okay, I want to also say at the outset that I had no preconceived notions when I decided to review the text. I did not expect to find errors. I didn't have any kind of an agenda. I was simply trying to do my part to assist all of you to make the text better for our children. That being said, I did find a lot of things that I considered to be objectionable or problematic with the text. They came in 3 different forms. First of all, I found some omissions of law, okay? And just a quick example, because I'm running out of time, in the consumer law chapter where it talks about telemarketing, for instance, it mentions some of the FTC regulations, but it says nothing about the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, which is the most important law there is for protecting consumers against telemarketers. And so I couldn't figure out why that would be left out. So that's one example. There were at least a dozen obvious omissions that I found in the text. There were some misstatements in the text. There was some bias, but I'm going to just get right to what I think was the most problematic, and that is the way that the text teaches or doesn't teach the Constitution. Mr. Bracci is correct. The very first page of the text starts with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, one of the speakers said that within the first chapter the Constitution is mentioned. That is correct. After the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I have to say, I've been through a lot of textbooks in my time, and for those that don't know, I am an attorney. I've never seen a legal textbook start out in the United States, an American legal textbook start out talking about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it's actually worse than what Mr. Bracci said, because he kept calling it international law. But the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is not a law. That's a resolution. It's not binding. It wasn't binding on the nations that adopted it in the UN, and it's most certainly not binding on the United States. Okay? So, it starts out with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and at the end of the chapter was something that I found extremely troubling. And the audience can't see, but I'm going to read it, because I don't want you just to hear my opinions. I want you to hear the text. It says, "Many countries have more serious human rights violations than the United States. This point may be one reason some people in the United States tend to use the term human rights only when referring to violations that occur in other countries. However, human rights do apply to all people in all countries around the world, including the United States." Now, note that it's not talking about the past. It's not. I thought for a second maybe they were going to talk about slavery or internment camps or something like that. It's talking about right now in 2017. It's teaching our students that the United States is a human rights violator. Okay, to me that's a big deal. So I wanted to see, well, what is it that they think constitutes a human rights violation in the United States? And it doesn't take us long to get to that, because they actually say, the part I didn't read, but in that same snippet that I just gave you, it says that at the end of each and every unit, they're going to give us an example of how the United States is a human rights violator, to get the students thinking about how the Universal Declaration applies in the United States, and how we can improve in applying that and following that. So one example is found, and this is Exhibit 2 that I've given you all, and I'll read from it for the benefit of the audience. "Though the U.S. Constitution does not refer to a right to housing or shelter, a few state constitutions and state laws have been interpreted to include that right." Well, actually, that's not true either, that they've found a right to shelter, which is inherently temporary. But anyways, in addition, some international documents expressly include housing as a human right. For example, Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights includes the following: everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and his family, including food, clothing, housing, medical care, and necessary social services, and the right of security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Okay, and then it goes on, citing more of these, international resolutions and so forth. And then it gives a case for the students, and it talks about a poor family that gets evicted from their apartment. Okay, and then it asks the students, what arguments can the O'Reillys or a lawyer make as to why they should receive housing? Okay, so the only argument that they even presented to the student was for the housing was this international resolution. And then they're asking the students to advocate on behalf of this family that's been evicted to state that they've had their human rights violated for being evicted. Okay, so this is the first of many examples. It's pervasive throughout the text, this idea that because this international resolution guarantees economic rights, such as housing, health care, a job, or what have you, that if we don't do that in the United States, we're violating human rights. Okay, now what would really happen, now, and by the way, I need to also say just how completely irrelevant this example is to the chapter. The chapter was on teaching the kids to be smart consumers and negotiating a lease, okay, prudently and successfully. And then here at the end of the chapter, it's asking them to go to court and advocate for an evicted family and tell the judge that they shouldn't be evicted because of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Okay? Now, I can tell you as an attorney that if I did that, I'd be committing malpractice, because the Universal Declaration of Human Rights means nothing in a United States courtroom. Okay? The judge would say, well, that's great. What can you tell me from the Florida Landlord-Tenant Act? I couldn't care less about the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And he'd probably pass a note to my client to turn me into the bar. But that's what we're teaching our kids. Okay? Go out and advocate using the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And I think that to me, this seems like it's also kind of subverting the Constitution, or making it appear inferior, because it's saying, well, it says, though the U.S. Constitution does not refer a right to housing, yada, yada, Universal Declaration does. We're in business. Okay, now the next one, I really want to I'm interested in getting the board's reaction to this. It says, the U.S. Constitution does not provide a legal right to education, and the responsibility for public education in this country has historically been left to individual states. Yada, yada. I'll skip a little. Here we go. Because public schools are funded largely from property tax revenue, wealthy communities are able to generate more revenue to spend on educating their children than are lower income communities. As a result, students in the wealthiest districts are on average better prepared for college or for jobs. Some argue that this resource disparity violates the principle of equal opportunity for all, and urge states to provide funds to equalize spending across the state regardless of local property tax revenues. What are two arguments that would support such a policy? So this is literally asking our kids to write arguments in support of the idea that each county should take its property tax revenue, pull it together, and then disperse it to all the counties so as to equalize the amount of funding for each district. So I want to ask the board, and you don't have to answer now, but I'd love to hear your response in board comments. Is it the board's position that the Collier County School District should write a check to a poor district nearby, maybe the district in Glades or Hendry County, in order to support this idea.
Your time is up, sir.
Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. I had a lot more really good stuff, but I just want to say that, yes, a lot of the text is good, but there are some major issues. And like I've pointed out here, it could be reformed. The board should require the textbook creator to reform it. Otherwise, you need to find a new text, because as it stands, I think it's a breach of the trust to the parents that send their kids to Collier schools. Thank you.